Hello, everybody. Welcome to our studio here at Into the Score. My name is Avishai Darash. I'm your host for this podcast. And Into the Score, we get a chance to sit with very interesting people from a different array of business, entrepreneurship, music, arts and culture, and everything that comes in between. And today, I have the pleasure of having Pietro Rossi with me here in the studio.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure, man.
It's our pleasure, man. It's a long form conversation. I want to know all about you, taking from the beginning.
All right, the very beginning.
The very beginning, yes.
Okay, well, I was born in Italy, in a small town called Cassino, kind of halfway between Rome and Naples, so you would say the center south of Italy. I come up from a family that's not really music related per se. My mama, she's a teacher, and in the end, that actually played a role in my career without knowing it. And my dad has been working in pharmaceuticals, so something completely else. But by the age of, I think, 7 or 8, I started actually to take a course as a keyboard player. That was kind of my very first step into music. And that kind of snowballed into basically me running this course for 5 years. And then, my rock and roll career as a teenager kind of started. So I wanted to go a little bit further with that. And I actually studied a course in, singing course. And I became kind of a band leader. We were doing a lot of covers, Pearl Jam, Radiohead. That was also my very first presence on stage as well. And so that was basically my very first contact with music as a performer, in a way also as a composer. We started to write music, original music as well. And by the age of 16, I already had kind of 3 different bands I was playing with. Some of them were cover bands, so we were basically playing live at pubs, clubs, and some other was more original music, more into post-rock, if it makes any sense. But I do believe the main, kind of a key moment of my life was first and foremost going into the studio for the first time to record my band. And that's when I realized how much power the guy behind all of the, the knobs and the switches actually had. And I was staying overnight, actually seeing how it would operate after I was done with my recordings. And then I asked him, where did you learn this? How do you get here? How do you get to this point? It was a small studio in the province, don't get me wrong. And it's like, well, there's a few options. Back in the days, we used to actually learn this craft by doing it as an intern. Nowadays, there are actually a lot of schools that can actually prepare you for that. And that kind of pushed me after my first bachelor, a few years later, to actually start a diploma in audio engineering.
Bachelor in what?
Audio engineering.
Audio
my
engineering.
first bachelor instead, it's in musicology. So I studied University of Rome. So I basically became a musicologist in a way, even though I never really worked as such. And then the other very important moment that I always remember, very, very dearly was on 9/11. I was in Berlin doing a student exchange. I think I was 15 or 16 back then. And I already booked the concert from Radiohead. So my 9/11 in Berlin, I actually witnessed Radiohead playing live on that very same evening. And that was a revolutionary moment for me because I realized the power that music actually has to people. And especially with Radiohead, also the power of sound shaping and how much you can actually do just by working on the sound. So all of these things combined, basically, after I graduated from the University of Rome in musicology, I realized, well, I actually want to be taking a more active role within the industry. And eventually, I'm not going to make it as a musician, but as a technician, I would love to do that. And that's kind of how it all really started.
What was the thing that kind of deterred you from becoming an instrumentalist in comparison to being a sound engineer?
I guess, after I never really pursued the career within the conservatory, which is the only way, I would say, at least back home in Italy, it's the only way to really get a proper stamp and really develop enough skills to be able to at least be a tour player, session player. So I realized that I had no time to really make up for all of that. And I was still, I was a teenager. I liked to go out. So I never really dedicated that much time to actually study a specific instrument. per
Because
se.
of the amount of practice that it requires
Correct.
and the sacrifice.
Correct.
Yeah,
So, and I realized I'm not going to be good enough for that.
yeah.
But people do say that I have a pretty good ear. I do understand the language. I do play live. I do play with all different kinds of musicians. And I realized I can actually be helpful within the industry by becoming a sound engineer.
Yeah. So you finish your musicology
Yes.
degree. How old are you back then? 21?
I finished in 2007, so I was 22.
22.
Yes.
Okay. And
Correct.
then how long does it take for you to make the decision to go into the studio and get a diploma in sound engineering?
It took me almost 1 year.
1 year.
So in 2008, January 2008, I moved to Barcelona. And I actually, because, the school that was suggested to me, let's drop names, it was the SAE Institute, which back home it was only present in Milan, in Italy. And, of course, that was the first spot I checked after I finished the uni. And I didn't really have a particularly good feeling about that specific campus. So I had a cousin living in Barcelona. I also had a girlfriend. She was Spanish back then, so I could speak Spanish, and I realized, well, why not to actually go to Barcelona, actually develop my language a little bit further down, and that's kind of what sparked the interest in doing essay and do it in Spanish. So that
Yeah.
was 2008. So straight 1 year after finishing the bachelor in Rome.
And how long are the studies in SAE back then when you
Back
were?
then, it was 1 year to actually get a diploma, which would be two-thirds of a bachelor degree, full time. And then once I finished that, I was hoping to actually already start working in the industry. But it was the worst possible time, to be honest. That's 2009, if you do
Yeah.
the math. And
Big crisis.
that was horrible. So in fact, I couldn't find any job in Spain. I had to return back home, and I started to work as a technician, basically setting up stages for little venues. But it was a lot of hard work and not really quality work per se. So I started to ask myself, what the hell am I actually doing here? I'm getting underpaid. I'm breaking my back, and is this really what I want to do? And that's when one of my classmates from Barcelona actually reached back to me and said, well, together with two more students from the Barcelona days, we're moving to Amsterdam because we have the opportunity to do one more year and actually collect a bachelor degree in recording, in audio engineering. And so basically, I was pretty broken. I had to ask for a loan, and I managed nonetheless to move over here and give it one more chance. And, let's see, maybe Amsterdam, it's in English, it's a different environment, maybe there are going to be more opportunities. Really big finger crossed. And it actually worked out quite well.
Yeah.
So in 2009, I moved to Amsterdam together with my Spanish friend, Colombian guy, and a Mexican dude.
Would you say that it was like bottom that you hit in the sense of like, okay, I have nothing to lose, let's just try it?
Yes. Basically, after returning to Italy from Spain, I was doing these jobs in setting up stages, rigging stuff. Not really for the money, but just because the money was extremely low. But just to see if that was actually the only thing I could do in Italy. And in fact, it's kind of bad to say it, but without having proper connections in Italy, it was very difficult for me to start in the proper business, the proper industry. So I realized that was kind of my bottom. I even remember my dad took me out with him a couple of days to see, let's check it out if my work is going to be a thing for you. And that was probably the lowest moment ever. I was showing up with my dad, trying to memorize all of the spiel he had to do. And I have nothing to do with pharmaceuticals. So that was the lowest moment, most likely, yes.
Yeah,
Which wasn't easy, it wasn't easy at all. I was like, what the hell am I doing? And I was pretty proud of my studies as well, even though, and that's something that continued to repeat itself. When I finished my first career, people would be like, so what are you? What do you do? I'm a musicologist. Nobody would really understand what that is, or most. And even nowadays, what do you do? I mean, I'm a sound technician. That's the easiest way to actually, explain what I actually do. But those things are still in place. But indeed, I'm extremely blessed that in the end it worked out. And
Yeah.
this city was key for me.
So technically, like, you're moving to Amsterdam, you're doing another year, right?
I'm
In
doing
SA?
one more year,
We're
indeed.
doing one more year, and it's like you're saying basically, okay, you know what? I have nothing to lose. Let's just try this. It fails, it fails. You know how it feels if it fails, whatever.
If it fails, I'm just going to be broken. And, I'm going to have to work to make up for it. But at least I tried.
At least you tried, yeah. That's something I think it's so important to. I see that I see that factor repeating also, especially here in the podcast when I talk to successful entrepreneurs. The thing of like, at least I tried, because to be on your deathbed, let's say, and be like, I wish I tried it.
What if?
What if is a worse feeling than
It is.
it didn't work out. At least you gave it your best shot. So you're doing Amsterdam. You're again embroiled in this like community of
Yes.
SAE. How is that year?
That year was, to me, everything was new. Let's start from the beginning. My English was completely broken. So I couldn't really properly follow classes either. It's like a lot of translations, a lot of, translations in the process just to understand basic concepts. So it was kind of hard on that sense.
And you're around 24, 25?
I was back then, 26 at that
26,
point.
okay.
Yes, but my English was like the average English of early 2000 Italians. They are below, within that age group.
Yeah.
So it was like very, very, very little, and so that was But in the end, that was another challenge that I managed to to go through. And then also getting used to this new city, which compared to my previous one, which was Barcelona, is completely different. Barcelona is a place of course, tapas, being outside, spending time on at the sunshine. It's also a city with with a nice seaside, which I always love cities with sea and ports. So it was a different way of also socializing. Of course, the society is quite different. But it was great. It was really, really good. And the other thing that I must say as well is that, of course, I didn't know the campus in Amsterdam. So all of the studios, every single SAE campus has its own specific studios with their fancy desk, analog or digital. So technology-wise, I also learned a lot. I'm always been an extremely nerdy guy for being, a music head per se.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's funny. I mean, it's another thing that keeps on returning here is that, I like interviewing nerds. It's because it's because you can get yourself so immersed in a craft,
Yes.
To a point of like, you get this like tunnel vision, and this is just your world right now, and you discover another avenue, another door is being opened, another this, and you immerse yourself for years, actually, if not a whole lifetime in something.
Correct. I mean, one of the things, I wish I had more time too, is actually to also get another degree in electrical engineering. That's
Wow.
one of the things I wish I could have, ticked off the list.
Is it something that you see as complementary?
I do
In
see.
which way?
In a way that you can actually develop your tools. You don't have to go out and buy them, but you can actually build them yourself to your own needs. And
Yeah.
that, I think, it's a super powerful thing. It all starts, being an audio engineer with having to maintain and service your analog gear. And so you start to open and look into the circuits. What is this? How can I replace this, which is broken? And then you realize, wow, if I would have a deeper understanding of this, I could actually design my own circuit to do specific things instead of having to Frankenstein.
Basically, own agency in that sense, like
Yes.
self-determination, like
Correct.
to the fullest, in a way of, this is what I want to get, and not being reliable on the Frankenstein aspect. of it.
Correct, and also on the business level. When I started, off the tangent here, when I started my YouTube channel, which was out of passion again, Redstone Productions is my own company, and I have this format on YouTube, which I launched, I think, 10 years ago now, just called Look Into. And the idea there was just to open the analog pieces of gear I collected through the years and see what they're made of, really what's inside, And if I would have known a little bit more about electrical engineering, I also saw a lot of opportunities business-wise, because those were the first years where, Chinese companies or Asian companies, let's put it like that, started to actually put onto the market affordable units that would compete very well with the traditional German or US-made analog units. And I wish I had a little bit more grasp on the technical aspect of it, so that I could eventually even go out and start a company in China, because I saw a lot of opportunities there.
Mm. What is stopping you of doing it? Actually, what is stopping you of just getting another degree?
It's just, I think we all caught up with our own daily life, and and also try to maintain your mental sanity in a way. And at one point, you need to put a little bit of, like a gap. It's like, I wish I could pursue this, but this is not going to be benefiting me on a personal level, on a social level. There's a lot of things I wish I could have done, but this is definitely one of the first one. It just requires a lot of time. And to go back and study this for real, it would take too much time and probably wouldn't be financially viable at this point.
Because you would have to put so much on the
Correct.
side. And
Correct. I have my own studio. I have all of these projects I'm following on. So it wouldn't really be. I wish I had done that a little bit earlier, to be honest.
So, okay, so technically now you're in that first year, you're struggling with the English. You're struggling basically like cultural shock, probably also coming here. It's like completely different Barcelona or completely different than where you grew up in Italy.
Which is Rome. So I did the university in Rome, which is a major big city.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
Completely different. You're doing the first year. What is happening after that?
What happened after that is that I think it was the last 3 or 4 months of the SAE year here in Amsterdam, they were pushing us to do an internship somewhere. So try to place ourselves.
Right.
And I was hanging around with a very nice group of creatives, which were all kind of based around the OT 301, at the Overtom 301.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a group of artists. They were called starving artists. And
it was in this big complex,
correct,
right? Yeah.
Correct. And I lived there for a while as well. And basically, they offered me a job as as a sound technician for the live events. And it all started as an internship. I started the best I could, and then they actually realized that I was very passionate about it. So when that ended, they offered me a job. Of course, on a freelance base, and that's what, in a way, pushed me to open my own company in Amsterdam. So OT301, of course, required me to do invoices, and that kind of, in 2010, helped me to set up, as a good push to set up my own company. I did that for almost a year while I was touring with bands, which were residents there as well. So I did a lot of live sound straight after SAE, I would say the next 12 months. And then I got called by SAE manager, and I got pitched into this idea of applying for a job at the John Lennon Educational Tour Bus. That was the next major milestone, I would say, in my growing career.
Tell me about it.
I mean, the John Lennon Educational Tour Bus, it's a non-profit organization that was set up in the late 90s in the US. And it's basically a mobile recording studio on steroids. It is the most advanced non-profit mobile recording studio you can find. And, it was all started by Yoko Ono, together with Brian Rothschild, who was the director of the project. And the idea is to basically give hands-on opportunity to kids that have never been experiencing a songwriting session, both on a technical level or creative level and social level. And basically helped them to write a song and record it and shoot a music video. It sounds like a lot, but it's one of the most rewarding projects I ever worked with.
Yeah.
Because imagine any school could request a bus by one of their principals or teachers, and then we would arrive early in the morning with the bus. And we would help a group of students, up to 10 at the time per session, which might not even know each other, to actually write a song. And that's one of the biggest challenges ever. First of all, age-wise, everything from 10 years old up to university level, so all sort of things. Majorly, it was focused at teenagers, so high schools and colleges. And within these groups of 10 students, you would get the metalhead, the reggae head, the hip hop guy, and they all wanted to do different things.
Wow.
And that was, it's really up to the 3 engineers and producers on board of the bus to actually help them find a common language, sit around the table, and give them enough space to be creative and be safe as well. We never allowed teachers on board of the bus while the sessions were running.
Yeah.
And that was, again, on a creative level, extremely useful for me. And on a technical level, it was the best possible gym because we had to work very, very fast. We had one session every other day. We were on tour 10 months out of the year. So we produced over 100 songs and videos per year. So it was intense, but it was extremely rewarding.
And because I'm so curious about the process, because you put these kids together. How do you micromanage them? How do you make sure that everybody has a voice, that they don't feel left out, that they really have an input? I can guess that
it's hard because, and we don't really get to pick the students. Somehow it's the school that requests the bus that creates this group of students that will be writing something. And there are students that have no instrument to pick up. So then we discuss with them, what about maybe you taking a role and a lead in the video production, or maybe you can be a lyricist. And that's one of the great things about the bus as well, which opens them not only this opportunity of writing a song and having that unique experience, but also to realize how many careers are available out there, which is not just as a musician, but you see, you can be a lyricist, you can actually take care of setting up lights, of uploading. So that's the thing. And I started this job as an audio engineer, junior one, and I learned, video production, broadcast, and how to deal with sponsors, because of course this is a no-profit which is made possible thanks to all of the sponsors that are actually running it and backing it up. So that was again extremely eye-opening for me. And I did that for a little bit over 1 year. It was super intense. I had a Dutch girlfriend back then. And at one point, of course, she said, either you come back or you don't.
Either you come back and I'm not a part of the picture, or you come
Correct.
back
now. and that's, again, I have to thank you, SE, again, because I raised up the phone and said, I think I want to get back to Amsterdam. Do you guys have anything for me? Would you guys be interested in working with me? Maybe as a teacher? How about that? And long story short, when I jumped out the bus, I started as a teacher at SAE Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So,
but just before we get back to you coming back to Amsterdam, how was meeting Yoko Ono actually? Did you?
Yes, I met her multiple times. She's a sweetheart. She's I remember the first time I met her, I was like so nervous about it. It's like, oh my God, I have
Starstruck.
Yes, I've always been a Beatles fan myself, and of course, traditional Beatles fan might not have a great opinion about the impact of Yoko within the Beatles legacy. But she really was down to earth for the most part. There were always people around her, lawyers that you had to go through, but when you actually get to go, and show up what you really are up to. And I worked with her as an engineer. So first and foremost, my first relationship was just helping her out to record a few things on board of the bus. Sometimes then she showed up on student sessions as well, which was great. She's a very unique person and has a very humble personality as well. And it's not something that really transpires out of what you see out there on the medias. She really is a sweetheart. She introduced me to both sons. She's a really nice lady. And
why do you think it doesn't transpire actually? Because I don't know her, of course. I think
it has to do with the fact with the Beatles history. I think that is the biggest thing that kind of doesn't allow us to look at her as an artist herself, but always as John's wife. and what that actually meant for the Beatles.
Yeah.
So there's that
She broke
stigma.
the Beatles. She's being accused of that.
Correct. So there's always that stigma that has nothing to do with her per se, especially nowadays. If you look at her, and then on the other end, I don't think she really never really cared about how people think and about her. So she's always been this very untraditional artist, if you wish, and she's been always advocating, I believe, for the right things. If you look back, give peace a chance, all of those things, the betting they did here at the Hilton in Amsterdam with John. So if you really look under the curtain, you can see how important she is also for that specific period of time. And nowadays, of course, she kind of, in the last few years, she retired to a private life. She's based off New York. She still lives in the old house next to Central Park. And but again, I wish I could have spent even more time with her, and I really hope I can be able to see her one more time at least.
Yeah, yeah. And is the bus still running? The project?
The bus is still running.
Still
Yes,
running.
there's actually 2 buses. I was hired on the European bus, and I was one of the very first engineers in 2014 when it was launched, 2013 now. And there's another one in the US. So the original bus was launched, I think, in 98 or 97 in the US. And then in 2013, they launched another operation with another vehicle here in Europe. And that's where I started, actually. But the Lennon Bus is also a family. It's a non-profit. So whenever, let's say senior engineers or engineers that spend quite a lot of time on the bus go out and do their own thing, then sometimes we get asked back to run specific projects, something that might require extra attentions. So I've always been in contact with them, and I've been working both on the US and European bus since then.
So you're coming back to Amsterdam after a year of doing this like crazy tours, like studio on steroids experience.
All across Europe, imagine
all across
that.
Europe. You're coming back. You're starting to teach at SAE.
Correct.
How does that look, coming back from such a hectic road life, going back to SAE?
That's a very good point.
Because the adrenaline is different.
It's a completely different game. It's in fact, it took me a while to adjust and to the normal life, as I would say, to the civilian life. One of the things I can say it, since it's a few years have passed. Before showing up at the house where my girlfriend was, every time I would get a little break, I would have to take at least 1 or 2 days off just to decompress and get back to the realities of how normal people actually live. Because when you are on tour, it's like you're on a mission, and only the guys that are around you on that mission can really understand what's going on. And when you get back to the normal life, it's kind of really hard to adjust. So in a way, starting to work as a teacher at SAE was a very chill sort of environment for me. I didn't have so much pressure, of course. The only pressure I had, it was my first time really teaching. But I do believe that all of the sessions I run with the Lennon Bus helped me big time to engage with students and being aware of what's out there, which is, I think, extremely relevant. So the technical part, again, I was always a nerd, and as soon as I realized what the curriculum was back then at SAE, I just jump-started into it, and I really went deep into the technical side. And it was a great time of my life, to be honest. It's I could see all of it coming back in a way. The place where it was, where I ended up on my lowest moment, SAE Amsterdam, became sort of like a new beginning.
Yeah.
So
where you touched rock bottom, it was actually like
correct, and
life,
I could see, okay, now I actually even belong to this place, and that's something I built on my own. Going through the hard times, the hard patches, but it was great. And to be honest, to teach back, it's again one of the things I am not sure I could do without, at least at the moment, because it's has multiple ways of really rewarding you. First and foremost, as a professional, you are aware of what's out there. What are the young audiences really listening and paying attention to? How is the technology impacting the new generation? And then on the other side, you're giving it all back to them. So whatever you learned, you're trying to give it all back to them without keeping anything. There's no gatekeeping when it comes down to audio engineering, I believe. There are a few tricks that, somebody might pretend it's a secret weapon, but in the end, just giving it back and see how these new generations apply these techniques with the new technology and with the new, the music that's been coming out. It's extremely eye-opening for me again.
Yeah. So tell me well, it doesn't have to be in a nutshell because we have time, but what is really the difference that you hear in terms of sound production or sound design that the younger generation is listening to than they listened to 20 years ago?
Again, I think the biggest difference, if we want to go back to the roots, it's the tools that are being used. And and eventually the tools we use to make music will have an impact to the result, the outcome of what comes out of the speakers. So digital technology, that's something that, when I was starting was just at the very beginning, but I still had to learn how to operate tape, but nowadays, these guys have no real idea of it. And actually what they're trying to do is to chase analog sounds with digital technology. And that's a nice fusion of elements if you really think about it. If you're a purist, you might be, that throws me off big time. And the non-linearities of analog gear, the voltage that goes through there and all the things that could go wrong, you're not going to get the same with the zeros and ones. That's pure math. But these newer generations are actually using a lot of, let's say, digital tools that try to emulate the analog flavor of things.
Interesting that lo-fi is so popular. Huh?
It is. And if you really think about it, it's digitally made for the most part. There are still some, cliche bands that can afford to produce everything in the analog domain, but that has become something very, very, very rare, to be honest, because of the budget. Everything, budget-wise, there's way less budget, so everything needs to happen faster. So the whole turnaround of any project needs to be faster. We cannot spend not even 2 weeks in a studio if it's an indie band. Back in the days, you could, Red Hot Chili Peppers, they would rent a whole mansion and spend a couple of months in there with Rick Rubin. That's not happening anymore. And that's,
unless you have some beneficiary that just throws money at you.
But that is not the reality of the industry for the most part. So to go back to your question, what has changed? The tools that are being employed are digital, so that has an impact on what comes out of there. There are some new genres that are, of course, the evolution, or at least the mix and fusion of old styles that became something new. I believe specific sounds could not be really used back in the days. I think about the chair, the auto-tune, how all of that thing came out. It came out as an effect. Actually first came out as a way to pitch correct stuff in real time. Then in the studio, and then one major artist, Cher, started to use it as a creative tool. Now, if we look 20, maybe even 30 years later than that first release of Cher with Auto-Tune, now it's being used to create genres and subgenres, and that's a signature sound.
Yeah.
So that is, in a way, a result of the technology and how people interact with it.
Yeah, and no, it's I find it so interesting, and basically, so take me. How long are you teaching in SAE in that period?
Since then, how many years?
Yeah,
now?
I mean, like you started as a professor there, right? And you're still teaching until this day.
I'm still teaching, so now it's been 11 years.
11 years.
11 years teaching there on a freelance base. I'm now, reduce a little bit of the amount of commitment, but I try to give it back as much as I can. I have other things going on, of course, but yes, it's been 11 years.
I'm trying to understand, when did the, because you have your own baby, in that sense, your own production company, Redstone Productions.
Correct.
Your own studio. When did this come? When did you start? When did you decide actually to take that leap of faith and be like, I'm going to open my own studio?
Technically, the actual...
And how it happened?
Technically the business was set up when I started to work at the OT 301, so straight after SAE. So I was kind of a junior graduate, technical level, and I just had a storage where my company was actually registered at.
Okay. Yeah, you need for the KVK, yeah, of course. So it was a storage space.
It was a storage space. It
That's
was in
funny.
the basement of Wilhelmina Park House, which isn't still where I am right now, but it just became much bigger than that. And then I started again to slowly purchase, and that's a whole another debate we could have. How students want to buy everything, and
That's really important. Say as much as possible, please.
yeah, I mean, imagine I come out of SA Barcelona and Amsterdam. I see all of these fancy studios. I want to have it all,
Yeah, you get like flustered.
I'm like, I've been now thrown out of the door because the school is done, and I have to, now to figure it out on my own with the gear I have, and I had no freaking gear. I had a set of monitors, a pair of headphones, and very inexpensive Chinese large condenser microphone. And I was like, I want to buy this, I want to buy this. And you know what? I actually reached back to the audio technician that was recording me back 20 years before. The first studio where I first got
when
inspired.
You were
yes,
a
and I was like,
going for
Damiano, I mean, I just finished SAE. It's good to hear back from you. I just, I want to buy this and this. Where should I start? And the guy said, okay, I totally understand. You're completely overwhelmed with this. You want to buy everything, but of course you have no money for every single piece you wish. What I can suggest you is, what do you think you're going to be doing within the next 6-12 months? Are you going to be recording mainly? Are you going to be taking work as a mixing guy? And start to build it one piece at a time. And instead of buying a bunch of inexpensive pieces of gear that could cover almost all of the bases, but without you having the time to really even using all of them, buy a very good microphone preamp and a very good microphone. Start with that, building blocks. Then hopefully that will generate enough money for you to realize what's the next thing you will need. You don't need everything at once. In fact, don't get overwhelmed by that. It's, we have to start with the things we really need and build from that.
So that the step-by-step thing is very important.
Big time. And I mean, nowadays, of course, the tools became way more affordable than even 10, 15 years ago. But I still am a big believer of, building blocks bit by bit, baby steps, and not rushing into into this big mall or whatever it's selling out, outboard gear or music instruments, and buy everything you can so you can try it out. Try to, on a professional level, buy purchasing things based on what your business really needs.
Yeah.
And then let's see where that takes you next step. And long story short, I now have a pretty good studio base here in Amsterdam, still within the same building at the Wilhelmina Park House where I had my storage. And now I've been blessed enough to be working in the studio for many artists. And I'm pretty happy with it. I think I am at the point right now where I could say I don't need anything else.
Wow. Okay. So basically, like that feeling of scarcity in the beginning of like, I need to have this table, I need to have this type of softwares, I need to have this, I need to have that. This is something that is very normal to feel, you're saying?
Yes.
Especially coming out of school.
And I see that every day with students. You know, at the end of the session, at the end of the lesson, when the bell, if there's one, rings, they all come to you at the desk. It's like, what shall I buy? Shall I buy this? Shall I buy that? Can I? And you're like, what do you need to do? What's the scope here? Are you trying to do this job? Okay, that then maybe makes more sense to go with this, but think ahead that you might be graduating to a next piece of gear in a couple of years, so maybe wait on that. So I can see this, and I still see it nowadays, even with the gear being more affordable. But in the end, if I look back, I think it's very normal because especially when you're studying in a private institution where you have all of these tools available for you, you feel like you need those tools. And if you don't have that, then you're missing out. When in reality, those are good training tools, which should kind of push you to actually be creative yourself, and how can I get there even without those tools. And nowadays with the digital technology, I think we are at the point where you almost need nothing to be able to produce and put out music.
Yeah, industry grade in that
Industry
sense.
grade, industry
Yeah.
grade. I mean, there are still a few things, of course, that you will have to purchase microphones. There's no way around that. But then, even then, we can look at a lot of composers that actually mock a lot of compositions, and those actually end up being on a movie itself because there's no budget for an orchestra
Yeah.
to be recorded.
Yeah.
So that's the reality. And
I was surprised by some patches, because I'm such a purist. Like I recorded so much, I recorded so many acoustic instruments, and then I started to dig deep into the patches,
Yes.
native instruments, BBC orchestra, these type of stuff. I was really surprised. I was surprised by that would cost me tens of thousands of dollars now to
Correct.
put it on tape. I mean, it's $25,000 or euros for a rehearsal with a big one.
It's
Not to
insane.
mention
I mean, and
yeah.
and let's look at this technology as enablers. They are definitely allowing us to pitch ideas into maybe producers or labels or directors.
Exactly.
And then it depends on what's the budget that's
Yeah.
available. Then we're gonna make do with this or this. But back in the days, you had no other option.
Yeah.
You either go full in, or the MIDI sounds back like 20 years ago were kind of really crappy, man.
Yes. Yeah.
So you couldn't really present that as a legit industry work. Nowadays, you really can, and it's...
And what is your feeling with, let's say, because if I compare it to coming from my point of like, if you know how to write, the patches and all that stuff, it just enhances, it just makes the sound better. But the technique of writing for strings or writing for winds or writing, that's a fixed thing that's been running for centuries. And technology just enhanced it. But my question is, in your field, how much a skill is imperative to be like a fantastic or a masterful engineer, or do you need the equipment to be that? You get what I'm saying? Like it's...
I mean, yes, I think I do. I do believe going through the experience of using or, working with actual gear and actual musicians and actual composers does bring an extra value. And if, working with artists make us better, all of us, creatives. And when you are the only... So I'm trying to say this because the only downside, or the major downside of writing in front of a computer with all of these very fancy patches that sound very realistic is just that you are producing your own in your own bubble in a way. And that is something, it might sound great, but what if an actual violin section is playing that part? They might even tell you, hey, by the way, we cannot really play that as that.
Yeah.
And that's the result you get. And I think, it's a blessing and a curse in a way, because this creates new languages, because a lot of people are using these incredible Spitfire orchestra patches that sounds like a real deal, but they're playing parts that a real orchestra wouldn't really play.
No. Yeah.
So that's one of the things, especially, for the guys that are, very focused listeners. They're like, whoa, okay, that sounds, sounds different.
That you cannot, it's not physically, like, it's something that I ask people regularly. Just, if you're not a pianist, don't write parts for piano. I'm not saying everybody is free to do what they want. Just that sometimes you can see, like, physically it's impossible.
Correct.
It's actually, you just wrote something that I need an extra finger, or the spaces are just physically impossible for that. And I understand that the software gives you whatever you want.
You can copy and create layers of things, and it's like, the limit is your CPU, to be honest.
Exactly, but then the real skill, I think, is to have it being reflected in both ends. Meaning that, let's say, down the road, let's say you write a brilliant soundtrack as a composer, and down the road, an orchestra wants to pick it up and be able to play it with the video, which is with the film, which is very popular right now.
Correct.
It needs to be able to be well written very well for the orchestra, and not just for what you said, the bubble of the composer, that sits there, and it's actually limitless, but at the same time, it's not human at some point.
Correct.
Yeah,
And it's you hear the disconnect if
Yeah.
you're focused enough. It's like, oh, but again, there's nothing wrong with it, and I think great subgenres can sparkle out of that.
Yeah.
New languages or things that we didn't even think about without these tools. So that's why, again, even going back to your previous question, I do believe that the tools inform what we create.
Yeah.
And for the up-and-coming engineers, the major trend that I see, especially teaching nowadays at SAE, is that instead of defining themselves as audio engineers or wanna-be engineers, they want to be producers. I'm sure it has to do also with the city and the music trends going on within Amsterdam as well. But that's a major shift. So now we are empowering them not only with the engineering tools, but with the production tools, and they have almost superpowers. Now it's up to them to use them, in an informed way, I would say.
Yeah.
And but eventually it's a good thing, I believe.
Yeah. What do you think of this romanticized perception of, for instance, if you take Billie Eilish?
Yeah.
Her brother did it live in the bedroom,
Yeah,
right?
that's what they say. Yeah.
But that's also connected to my previous question of this thing of they did not have a multi-million-dollar studio at their disposal. They used only patches and software and a mic, and they created such a hit. Do you think it's over-romanticized, or is it...
I think it's a brilliant marketing campaign,
Yeah.
if you ask me. I love the music they write, and I really like the outcome of it. But this fair dust or this extra special thing that, this message they are conveying where you can be Billie Eilish, you don't need anything else, it's a little bit misleading, to be honest. If you do a little bit of extra research, nothing that Google will hide from you, you will see that both her and her brother, they come off a very wealthy family, very well introduced into the Hollywood scene. And if you go even deeper than that, you will see even their first records was mixed in a proper studio with a big SSL and all of that. And but I think it can be inspiring. I do believe it's a big marketing thingy. In fact, you could buy Logic Pro and you will get their session as a demo.
Ah, really?
Yes.
That's cool.
So you could see all of all of the takes, and that was a
that's
clear
cool,
message.
that's
That they
cool.
were saying, you can do it yourself. All you
Yeah.
need is an Apple computer, a laptop, and a pair of
$6 million
headphones.
in the bank.
And
Yeah.
they say, you're missing that little factor there. So I think it's good. It can be inspiring. But as always, we live in a society where a lot of messages have been thrown at us for all sort of kind of reasons. And most of them are marketing related.
Yeah, exactly. Most of it is just branding. It's to
It is.
She came from nothing and she became this global
That doesn't,
megastar.
doesn't take anything away
The
from...
music is good.
Yes, it's
The music
very
is
good.
great. I mean, I heard it and I was like, wow, this was done in a bedroom? How is that possible?
It is, I'm sure it was originally composed, brainstormed, and written in the bedroom.
But mixed and mastered in
No,
a
no,
bedroom?
that's
I
no.
mean,
You can check it.
sounds so unified, like...
It's been mixed in a proper studio
Yeah,
by a proper
yeah.
engineer that had the many credits before Billie Eilish.
Yeah. So that's my that's the answer.
Yes.
So now actually it's funny because we were talking about the orchestra and we were talking about your studio, and
Yes.
now I want to ask you about Reza.
Oh,
I want to ask you about this particular, and we're going to put it also, we're going to put the mini documentary that you made, we're going to put in the links, we're going to drop it in the links.
Thank
But
you.
can you tell me from, like, how did you come about? And also I have some questions about the writing because I listened to it, and it's really immaculate writing for orchestras. So I'm curious, but we'll get to it,
I mean, it was almost 2 years ago now, a year and a half, that Wu-Tang was going out on tour. It was the New York State of Mind tour with Nas
With
and
Nas,
De La
yeah.
Soul. And it was the US and Canadian tour. And basically, Reza was being a friend and supporter of the John Lennon bus for years now. Contacted our director, the director of the Lennon bus, Brian Rothschild, and he very kindly gave us a big donation so that we could be on tour with Wu-Tang, because basically during COVID, Riza wrote this, music for a ballet, which is basically a full album of 12 songs, 11 of which actually saw the light, and basically started to write it and compose it, from my understanding, on piano. He has a piano in his apartment, and the initial idea of him writing this piece of music, it's him during COVID finding this old book of lyrics from when he was 16. Old book of lyrics that he never thought was good enough for the Wu joints, for the Wu-Tang, which really talks about his first encounters with love, with drugs, going out, messing up, struggling, getting high, all those sort of things. The first experiences, major experiences. And basically it was a book of lyrics. During COVID, it was killing time eventually, and he started to actually write music for it on piano. And then he got a residency at the Colorado Symphony Orchestra. So he did spend quite some time with the orchestra, and he actually composed for them together with Christopher Dragon.
Was Christopher Dragon, did he write the orchestration?
Yes.
Okay, so he didn't orchestrate himself.
In the
Because
credits,
I would be like floored if he just was like, I also orchestrated it.
I think they did it with four hands, even the adaptation for the orchestra. And I do know that Riza spent quite a lot of time studying this prior to the ballet, also because of the other movies he made. If we think about, Ghost Dog, it's a bit of a different one. It's a great soundtrack if you want to know what I think. But even the stuff he did for Kill Bill. So he had this. It's crazy what Riza can do on a creative level. I was extremely impressed. I think it is by far the most impressive artist I ever worked with myself. But basically, long story short, he had these pieces of music that he recorded with the Colorado Symphony Orchestra 2 years prior to when the Lennon Bus got the call. And the director very, casually sent me this message. It's like, the bus is going to be on tour with Wu-Tang, and we need you as an engineer. I'm like, what the hell is going on? It's like, what do you want me to do with that? And it's like, well, from what we know, because we didn't know the full story, Riza really wants to work on this album and have it mixed while they're on tour. And the tour was supposed, it went on for 40 days. We only had 10 days booked with them because the bus had to be somewhere else. In the end, we are non-profit. So, of course, we took the generous offer from him. And it was basically from the moment I received that initial SMS from Brian, 10 days later, I was on a flight to LA. The bus was being upgraded, and so together with another engineer of the US bus, we were at System Integrator Shop, Westlake in LA, where we were also installing a new immersive system, because that's the other thing I didn't know back then. Riza wanted to mix this album in Dolby Atmos, so in full immersive
5D.
sound. It's basically a full 3D mix. So you have music elements going all over you, and it's pretty intense. And so we had to first set up the studio for it, and then rush out of there and join the tour. I think we joined in Minneapolis, then we did a little bit of Canada, and we came back down. And to me, it was again the highest moment of my career, I believe, because for the first time I could see the use of both my studies together, the musicology and the actual technical part of it. Because and there were a lot of composers that Riza is in love, like Morricone, for instance. And I could hear those things in these road tracks. And so there was enough time to even discuss about it. And he really gave me kind of a blank paper. It's like, do your thing. It was very hard on a technical level because what I got ended in when we showed up at the tour, it was a hard drive with a Pro Tools session with all of the recordings in one session. There were some markers kind of trying to tell you what song it was. But there were a lot of songs where we had no full take.
No full
No
take.
full take.
So you had to.
So I would have,
Wow.
the beginning of this song, then you would hear the conductor stop. Okay, we start with this other one, and I would have to collage and piece all of this together, and that was pretty hard. And I didn't even have the score back then. So the first thing I did is like, I need the score. I need the score so I can make sure that all of the notes are in there if I need to be doing comping. And that was my first night on tour with them. Just really going through all of these takes.
And they were recording all in one space, one picture?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So basically you have bleeds everywhere. You have to comp from different mics. And
it was very difficult. It was
and-
very difficult technically. Of course, and even to be honest, I mean, you know how it is with an orchestra, you're never going to get exactly the same thing.
No.
So to stitch it together, it's quite an undertaking. And indeed, there were, ambient mics, the usual decatry. There were a couple of mics on the balconies as well, and then a few spots on the actual specific instruments. This is a 70-piece orchestra, so it's massive.
Massive.
And Risa's like, I think there are 8 or 9 songs. In the end, there were 12. So I was like, oh, okay, we got the extra ones here. And so I comped all of this. I created projects for every single song, making sure to keep all of the takes in case something he didn't like, we could restitch it together. And then on day 2, we showed up and we started to work. Basically, we had a little bit less than 1 day per song.
Yeah. How do you deal with it's more metaphysical, I guess, because you're getting the work of someone else.
Yes.
And I guess as an engineer, accomplished engineer as yourself, you want to be able to also have the source material done by you so you can know what to deal with when you mix.
Yes.
So you have like 2 layers happening at the same time.
Correct.
Here. You're getting work of someone else, and at the same time, you have to make it your own. How was that process?
That was hard. And of course, you don't want to point out that the mistakes the recording engineers did. That's definitely not a good vibe to bring into a session. But you have to work around them. There was one point where I really brought up to Riza, next time, maybe we're doing something like this, we should think ahead of how to mic in this for an immersive mix on a technical level, because there were few choices that were made in terms of mic positioning. There was really not thinking about the immersive mix, so techniques that could work for stereo, but they definitely are very challenging to be used.
But did it come? The immersive came later, or was it from the beginning?
From the beginning.
Wow. Okay. So the engineer.
So I received these multi-tracks, and I was told you have to finish the immersive mix on tour. We had an immersive setup, of course, on board of the bus, and then once you're done with this, you take it home and you do the stereo one for the vinyl, and that's what I did here in Amsterdam. So it's kind of hard, you want to respect. I'm sure there were so many challenges on their end when they were recording. But imagine all of this is happening while we are on tour with Wu-Tang across the US and Canada. So a lot of things are going on.
So when you're saying you're on tour with them, you're also functioning as their sound engineer on stage?
Not at all.
No, not at all.
So in fact,
you're not doing the front of the house, like nothing.
Not at all. That was all completely taken care of. We were just basically the mixing studio for Riza and the recording studio for Wu-Tang.
Yeah, but you were the mixing studio for the immersive orchestral thing, and for Wu-Tang, like they recorded also stuff.
Correct. So
you had to mix this while you were recording, tracking.
Yes.
So no sleep.
No, there was basically no sleep. The only time I could sleep is when we were traveling. So I was just sleeping on board of the bus.
So literally when you cannot work.
Yes, that's like, physically. Indeed, it was, man.
It's the eat, sleep, mix, repeat.
Absolutely. And, thing. The guy that was working together with me, was assisting, is like, we're never going to make it. How are we going to make it? We're going to freaking make it no matter what. Of course, if I look back, there are things I wish I could have done a little bit different, because indeed, having just even 1 day per song to do this kind of job
Yeah, if you think about
is
10,
like
10
I
days,
wish I had
wow.
1 hour more on every song.
Yeah.
But again, we are playing with the cards we are dealt with, and in this case, he was very, very clear about this. Once you guys out of here, I want to be done with this. I don't want to go to any other place. So it was super hard, and indeed, he dropped me the hard drive, and then on day one with all of the orchestral recordings, and then he also said, "Here's a bunch of beats that either I or Swiss Beats or DJ Premier did, and if the Wu members come on board, please make sure they don't just get high and smoke weed. They need to MC on top of this." So there was a back studio with Logic, because that's what he likes to use when it comes down to urban or hip hop production.
Yeah.
Where all of these beats were tempo mapped, ready to go, and we had a few MCs dropping on it, mainly Reza. We had G's on board as well. So we did record quite a lot of hip hop on tour as well, and basically after they were done on stage every night, he would come on board, listen to the mixes, orchestral mixes, and then after 1 hour, an hour and a half, when he was kind of tired with it, it's like, let's go to the back studio and do some hip hop.
So it's like 18 hours a day of work,
Easy,
basically.
easy.
18 hours a day of blue light and.
Correct. And
how do you mitigate like your energy level in that sense, that you don't start making mistakes or repeating, because at some point it gets into this.
It was super hard. I must be very thankful to the guy that was together with me aboard of the bus. He's actually the chief engineer of the technical bus, of the Lennon bus, and he was taking care of everything else that I didn't have to take care of, which is the bus operations, power. He was taking care of the logistics, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that headache, and he was very good at it. So it was always, if I was extremely busy with finishing something, he would go to the catering and take me lunch, and bring it home. So
which kind of vacuum that feels.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. And the only real moment where I knew I was kind of safe and nobody would walk on board, either the Wu members or Reza, it was when they were on stage.
Yeah.
So that was the only time where I could go out for a cigarette. I was like, can take a break. I can take a break now, because.
How long did it take you to recover after that?
A good week.
A good week of just like.
But I was also super, my adrenaline was like, and then when I got back, it took me a week, because I had that luxury, because I was still, contracting with him about the stereo mixes. But then once that week passed, I was told that now you have a week to do the stereo mixes. So it's like, okay, I guess it's a good thing we already have the immersive one. It's a good starting point.
And is it a simpler, maybe it's like a layman's question, but is it like a simple thing to adapt it from the immersive to stereo?
No.
No.
I wish it would be like that.
No.
In fact, I do believe the stereo mixes are a little bit more complicated on a technical level.
Because I mean, for me, for a layman, it kind of like sounds, okay, more factors, more things to take into consideration with the immersive.
Yeah.
More complicated.
It makes sense if you think it like that, but in reality, you're squeezing this much information into 2 channels.
And the immersive.
Your canvas is so much bigger.
Yeah.
So you're trying to paint a picture on a giant canvas where there's enough space for every single element. Now you're squeezing all them back into left and right, where things to get masked. So you need to employ techniques where this compresses this frequency I'm masking here and there, while still respecting the positioning on the immersive one up to a certain degree. Of course, you only have left and right.
Yeah.
So it could be more time consuming.
So it's actually going from 5D to 2D, with having the feeling of 5D.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's
that requires a lot of skill, actually.
It does. So
and also concessions and decision making and.
Correct. Is this the feel we want to get? And what I always say to my students, it's mixing in yeah, in stereo it's a little bit trickier because indeed you need to create space. How can you create space? By carving out space in other elements. But when you mix in Dolby Atmos or any immersive format,
You actually have to fill in space.
you have to make them feel glued together, that they belong to the same space. Otherwise, there would be just these random, objects here and there. So the tools are still the same, the colors are still the same. Red is red, green is green, but the canvas just changes the whole perspective on it.
Very interesting. Wow, I never thought about it like this. Yeah, are you happy with the end result of it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have done any better given the time limitations.
I mean, I heard it was fantastic. Now when you tell all these stories, it's like it just gives it actually like a completely different. I heard the 2D in that sense, the stereo. I couldn't hear the Dolby, but it gives it such a like a different dimension to it. To understand it also, when you work under such limitations or under pressure, it requires you to be more creative.
Yes.
It requires, because I can imagine if you had 2 years to do it, you would take your time.
All of the time.
And maybe you would get like chewed up.
Double check everything, run it via, by all of the, entailed parties, RISA. No, I really didn't have the luxury.
Was he happy with it?
He was very happy.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest thing that kind of told me, okay, I think you did a good job. Straight after the tour, we went with the Lennon bus at the AES, the Audio Engineering Society convention in New York. So all of these very fancy mixing engineers, big names. And we invited some of them to have a listen in a private setting on board of the bus to these mixes. And these, to me, legendary mixing engineers are like, wow, how long did it take? It's just like 10 days. I'm like, let's get out of here. It's like, this is not possible. It is. I'm alive. I'm breathing. I'm not sure for how long yet, but it happened. So that was, to me, the confirmation that we did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And then knowing really they didn't know the limitations we were facing, and they're like, yeah, this sounds spectacular no matter what. In fact, I think we did pretty good. We were, charting pretty high on the classical album on Apple Music. We did a lot of praise. We received a lot of praise from the press as well. And
did he end up doing it with a ballet company at the end, or did
yes,
it just,
he did.
Which ballet company was it?
Not sure, to be honest, at this point. I know they run different shows in, it's normally based off Jersey. That's where he normally lives, New Jersey. But then he also likes to spend a lot of time in LA. So depending where they're doing it, it's different companies, from my understanding. So that was that. And Risa has also tried to bring in the orchestra with the Wu concerts as well. I mean, I'm aware because one of the songs that I had to mix for this ballet and never really saw the light, we had the live version of the last song of the album, which was actually recorded at Coachella, and where all of the Wu members were actually on stage together with the Colorado Symphony Orchestra. So there was this debate: shall we use the studio recording or the live one as a final track? So I mixed them both. I had to do it both to give them the choice. But from my understanding, the Colorado Symphony Orchestra is actually touring with them whenever, before the ballet, and now there's the up-and-coming final chamber tour starting now in June. That should be the very last tour of Wu-Tang.
It's a question that just came up to me now that I would like to know. How would you do it more with like PDAs or like direct mics on specific?
You're talking about
instruments?
Thinking
like
about
if
the
you
immersive
would,
mix?
Yeah, if you had the possibility of recording it yourself, what would you be doing differently?
Well, we always need spot mics, at least for this production, because he also wanted some of these elements to move. So he didn't want the traditional presentation of the orchestra as a semicircle where you can expand it to a 360. He actually wanted, in specific sections, to have maybe this flute talk with the first violin. how the hell can we do that without spots? It's almost impossible. And what I mean with it, maybe bring these two elements up to the front so they can
Yes,
really talk to each
exactly.
other or bring it up. So for those renders, you do need spot mics because you have to be able to automate the volume and the positioning of a
Absolutely.
specific element, if possible. But then on the other level, I really like on another, I really like to have also the room sound as well, because eventually that's how an orchestra should sound.
Yeah.
So if I would do it again, what I would do is definitely make sure that the spot mics are more strategically placed. And what I mean with that, taking account the score, really, and try to talk with Riza about thinking about how we record this and how can these recording techniques really serve our immersive mix.
Yeah.
So if you already know that in this section, these movements need to happen, you need to have clear spot mics on those
Yeah.
elements. But then at the same time, I don't really like a lot to rely on artificial reverbs per se. So I would have, instead of using just a 5 mics on the ambient, so the Decca 3 plus 2, the expanded, maybe I would have used 7. That would have given me a little bit more, maneuvering and flexibility when it comes down to mix it in a format which is this big. Because if you really think about it, what's happening in Dolby Atmos, which is not linked to a specific amount of channels, that's the beauty of it, but basically you have this 3D environment. But in the end, the way most people listen back on a cinema or even in a studio, if they have the possibility with speakers, it's basically 7 speakers at your ear side. So it's like the 7.1, the low frequency effect. And then you have 4 on top, onto the ceiling. So you have 2 left and right front and 2 left and right rear tops. This is what creates the full envelopment and 3D
This
sound.
like feeling of a dome.
So
like,
if you can already start, instead of with an array of 5 mics with 7, that's already good to create at least this ear level representation of the room. If I would have the possibility, I would put even 4 mics more on top, or at least 2. So I have a 7 plus 2 pointing at the
Yeah.
ceilings where I could get the ceilings heights. But when it was recorded, none of this was really
None of
taken
it
into
was-
account. It was
was
like
taken into consideration.
traditional. It was like, no. And it
Even
was,
though he told it to the engineer that was basically
I don't
recording
think that back then they had the Dolby Atmos in mind when they recorded this, which was recorded 2 years prior to the tour,
Okay.
or a year and a half.
Would you also record instruments separately, if you could?
This kind of setup, orchestras, yes, at least sections of instruments.
Sections,
At
yeah.
least, have a mic per 3. And if it's, of course, firsts, viola, then I would get one specific
Yeah.
of them.
Because it will just, I can imagine it will just give you more place, like the same word that you use to maneuver.
Yeah.
You have more control in each section. Because I can imagine if you take a picture of the entire orchestra,
That's
you
it
have
is.
to-
That's a natural picture of what's happening
Yeah.
in the room. But if you want to have a play with it,
Yeah.
if you want to move things around, if you want to make it more dynamic, and that's what Riza wanted, and that's what Riza really wanted. It's like, do we just use this format as a way to presenting in a natural form, or can we actually get creative with this?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's your call, my man. I'm here to do whatever you see fit. What's the idea here? It's like, no, in this section, I really want this to be highlighted.
Yeah.
So that means movement. Okay, movement means let's control the automation volume on these specific spots.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah. And then it gives you just more, let's say, possibility to carve out exactly what the thing is that you want to
Correct.
do, instead of taking this constant concessions of like bleeds and
Yes. And then think of all of this, there were at least 3 songs we had to come together, so that we had to stitch together, which was like,
nitpicking.
Man. Yeah, really trying to see what is the best part to do it, what is the best possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty hard work, but I learn a lot. That's what I must say. And to be fairly honest with you, this was also my very first professional Dolby Atmos mix. One thing is to do it for independent acts, or of course also teaching it out as a
Yeah.
curriculum-based concepts. Another thing is actually to take this on a major, on a major artist production while on tour, and it being the very first time you're actually working in a studio freshly made, which anything could go wrong. A lot of things went wrong, and we had to fix it on the fly.
Yeah.
Yes, so that was the challenge.
Is it like a thing that it's a part of the consciousness of a sound engineer that things just go wrong?
Oh yeah, I mean, I always say half of our job is troubleshooting.
Yeah. Yeah, because I
Exactly.
see that it's this constant, like, I have no idea. I have no idea why. I have to check why this channel is not responding. I have to check why this cable is not doing what it's doing.
Yes, and it happens both with analog and digital.
Yeah.
To go
Oh my
back to
God.
it.
I can just imagine that with analog, it's like, wow.
With analog, there's no undo, so you can really screw it up for
Yeah.
real. That's the big risk
Yeah.
right there as a tape
It's very
operator.
destructible.
It
like, in
is.
that
It's
sense.
there's no way to go back. If
Yeah.
you punch in the wrong time, that's gone.
What do you think of the emergence now of AI coming into studio work?
I mean, I think the bigger question is what is the impact on our society, first and foremost, and then secondary, on the music industry. I am trying to stay away from it as much as possible, meaning I'm trying not to use it in my line of work. But of course, as an educator, I need to be very aware of it. And because a lot of students, a lot of up-and-coming engineers want to use it, and they see it as a quick way to get to the end result.
Yeah.
To me, it cannot really be, I mean, it's just comparing apples and oranges. They're completely two different things. This is what AI can do. It's, to the best of its ability, do what we instructed it to do, based on what's out there already. So the outcome you're going to get is some sort of string down version or diluted version of what's already out there.
Yeah.
You're never really going to get something new as an end result. There's never a critical thinking or listening really happening. And basically, it's all the same recipe that will be generated. And in a way, every single time we go through this, to this iteration, it will get diluted more and more. So to me, even when it comes down to mastering audio, which is the last step of quality control before any record goes out to the market, there are a lot of AI tool-based marketing services.
Oh, it's overflowing. It's saturated.
So, and I think they have a place, given the amount of releases, the amount of output that we generate in terms of content. So if you are, if we are maybe doing a podcast, not about music, but we are doing a podcast about, I don't know, UFC, just naming one. I can see there's a value in using this technology, because that music is not meant to be moving human people. It's just meant to be accompanying something else.
Exactly.
So for those scenarios, I do see that has a purpose.
Yeah, it makes me think. I saw in a group, Amsterdam musicians. It's a pretty large group of musicians in Amsterdam. And someone posted, I'm looking for a composer to write music for my film, 45 minutes, not paid. And I said, just use AI. Just take a bunch of AI patches.
That's exactly what, yes.
I mean, because you can't, whoever also agrees to do that, cool, go for it, do it. I don't think it's beneficial for us, but you have tools right now to be able to do that. But that person got trashed in the comments. I mean,
I can imagine.
Like, how dare you ask people to do such a huge amount of work for free, and just because you have a film, a feature film, blah, blah. But it's like, what it feels to me with AI is like, it's also like really unhinged in that sense, because it's such a powerful tool that not really anyone knows what is going on. Also, the people that are kind of like really are in the front line of developing it.
Yeah.
I kind of like, I guess it works, from the conversations that I'm seeing also with pioneers of it, they are worried about it because they can't control it.
No, I mean, you can convince ChatGPT that 4 times 5 is 25.
Yeah,
You can do that.
exactly.
You can do that.
Exactly.
So what we should be aware of is that we shouldn't expect the truth to be coming out of these prompts. They only know that much, and you can convince them otherwise, and then they will give you a different output. Somebody might say, yeah, you might be rephrasing the way you talk with them, and so kind of zoom in to get a specific result. But what I'm trying to say is it can be used, and it can be a lifetime, saver when it comes down to do specific works.
Right.
And I can really ask ChatGPT to do specific code line that it would take me way more time.
Yeah.
That I see use of that, but I would never rely on it to give me any criticism on anything, because that's completely, it's completely random. It's based out of what it knows.
Yeah.
And every single AI knows more or less, or it's more for this or more for that.
And it's based on plagiarizing also.
Yes.
Like it is taking its derivative work.
And that's the other thing as well when it comes down to, copyright.
Yeah,
And
that's a huge problem.
that's a different subject right
Yeah.
there, because especially nowadays where we kind of seen this huge shift where the distributors kind of are the the ones that are actually keeping the doors open or closed to us. If you think about what labels used to do, now it's these distribution services
Yeah.
that have the power.
Yeah.
And guess what? They might also be training their own AI based on their old database, and they might be creating something based off what we like. And we might, so there's a huge debate there
Yeah.
of who keeps the intellectual property
Yeah.
of all of this, and how much we are actually, giving it up to.
Wasn't Meta now slammed with like 800 million euros recently for
yeah, it's just last week, I
breaching?
think.
Yeah, exactly. It just happened last week. I mean, until this comes out, it'll be about 4 or 5 weeks. But they got slammed with such. It's a drop in the ocean for them.
It is.
To be honest,
It's
They have
factor.
so much money.
They know it. It's like, okay.
For them, it's more like an insult that they have to pay it, but they wouldn't feel it at all. They'll just.
Totally.
earn it
And
back.
again, AI, I think it's, and another question we should ask ourselves, is it sustainable? Also on an environmental level. Nobody really talks so much about it.
Dude, these
But
centers
is
are
it
like
a
a
good
million
thing?
homes.
Yeah,
It's like
is it
million
actually a
homes,
good
yeah.
thing? Is it something that it's serving us, or is it
Yeah.
kind of actually destroying
Yeah.
our environment?
Yeah, the amount of computing power that it needs to just
Water,
run.
it's crazy.
Yeah, every time they put like they call it like the AI colonies, it's like million houses, basically households that are being used. The same equivalent
It's
of
like
power.
the new oil industry, if you think
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah,
the way it's set up.
it's exactly that. Yeah, and so what is happening now with you? Like, how does your day look in that sense? Like, having your career, having like, are there projects you're not taking anymore? Are there projects you're saying no to? Like, take me. with
Yes. So I am being a little bit more picky nowadays about what I can really work on. Also, again, due to you have to be sane mentally and physically in order to really keep up with the work. I recently started to work with Dolby Labs. So I am now also an educator for them. So we're trying to actually explain how this immersive technology works for the upcoming engineers. So we go to colleges, universities, either online or in presence, and we kind of show them how it's done. Funny enough, as a year and a half ago, I was undertaking this job as an immersive mix first, and now I'm teaching it back. It's a whole.
That's cool.
So that is taking.
Did you get it from your mom? The thing of teaching and like having this affiliation to
That's
it?
why I was mentioning that before. I never thought I was going to be a teacher because I always thought it was kind of boring and lame, me being as a kid, I guess. But then, I guess it is. I guess it is. My mom, she's been teaching philosophy for many years. And eventually I think I got the bug from her a bit as well. And nowadays, again, I'm teaching kind of yeah, pretty much part-time for Dolby. I am running my studio pretty much every other day, if I can. I'm definitely in the studio every weekend. And on top of that, I'm also in charge of the Lennon Bus Europe operations, and that's
Okay, so you're now in charge of it.
yeah.
Okay, cool, cool.
So being the chief engineer there, that means make sure that the vehicle is in good state, make sure that all of the upgrades and every single bolt is properly tightened and all of
Yeah.
that. And then also make sure that you hire the right people for doing the job, meaning the 3 engineers, they're going to be on board. I'm not going to be taking points on who to hire as a driver. That's out of my scope. But that's going to be an important one. And then also help them out on these very difficult stops they might
Yeah.
have. If I look at, June 2025, I'm not even sure if I'm going to be joining the last Wu-Tang tour or not. I know that Risa requested the bus again. But at the same time, we are going to be out with the European bus as well, and we should be on tour with Jacob Collier.
Cool.
So that's
Nice.
happening in Europe now.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
either one or the other, to be honest,
Yeah.
tour-wise with the Lennon bus, and then hopefully September I can take it a little bit easier and travel somewhere Asia. That's the plan.
Take a vacation.
Yes,
maybe.
and look back at the West and have a laugh at it.
What would be the advice if you could sit with yourself from, let's say, with Pietro that just got into SIE in Amsterdam 2012, was it?
SAE as a student?
Yeah, as a student.
2009.
2009. So when you just came here, you have your entire portfolio, everything that you created and accomplished and
Yeah.
went through the struggles, the problems. What would be the advice you could give yourself?
Don't stop at the bare minimum. Whatever the schools or the teacher is requiring you, that's the bare minimum. Yeah. So that is just the bare minimum. That means that should be your starting point. Definitely don't stop there. So try to go way beyond what you normally being taught as a student. We always say it's a self-learning sort of path that you should also take as an audio engineering student and graduate. Don't spend too much time on gear. Try to spend more money on training yourself, invest in yourself, put in the gear. More and more giant, big studios are failing miserably. We just recently had the biggest, for sure, Benelux studio, Galaxy Studio, completely failed and went bankrupt last year.
What's the reason, you think?
It's just there's not enough money for
Costs,
to run those kind of cathedrals. It's one of the top 3 studios in the world, but failed. So that means you need to invest in yourself, not in the gear. You can always work in a studio, and studios can be even a mobile form. And so try to invest in yourself, train yourself. Try to be always with people that are a little bit more experienced than you. Try to graduate or be around people there. I always say I want to be the dumbest guy in the room. That's a good way of looking at it. So I can always learn. Another thing I learned the hard way is pay more attention to what people actually tell you, and don't always press your opinion just because you feel like you have a voice. I heard this from Quincy Jones. This probably it's somebody else that told it first, but I heard it from him. There's a reason why we have 2 sets of ears and 1 mouth.
That's Marcus Aurelius said it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So and it's like, it makes sense. So try to, we only have a limited amount of time in this world, and we don't have to reinvent everything ourselves. So try to pay attention what other people that are surrounding you are actually saying, and instead of always expressing your opinion. Sometimes I realized that I lost a lot of opportunities because I was always speaking out, and sometimes it's better just don't take it personally. It is what it is. Learn out of it. Be like a sponge, and try to travel as much as you can. That's the other thing that I wish we could do more and more. We are a global society, as they say. We should use that. That's a superpower that our ancestors didn't really have.
True.
So nowadays it's so easy to, maybe not so much go to the US at this point, but to really jump on a plane and go to the other side of the world. Before it would take months. And, on a boat. Nowadays we can really travel and
24 hours in the entire world, yeah.
So that's something that, again, before wasn't possible.
Yeah.
So I would, definitely try to point that way, that direction, and start somewhere. Don't. It doesn't have to be the danciest, fanciest gig. I studied at the OT301 here in Amsterdam, which used to be a squatted spot. And it's a great environment. I learned a lot out of it. I went on tour. I spent time in Turkey with the bands. I was touring with the Gypsy band. So try to really get all of that instead of really spending time on Marktplaats or on Thomann website. Try to see what is the best deal I can get this week. That's noise. That's just freaking noise. And guess what? 1 year from now, there's a new piece of gear that's just gonna do all of that better and cheaper. So what are you chasing here?
It's so funny. It's. I think this is what I had, because I came actually from the psychedelic trance before I was a pianist.
Okay.
And I learned actually on Cubase and synthesizers and all that. And for me, it was like, wait, I need to get another synthesizer. I need to get an upgrade constantly. I need to get this. Well, actually, what I wanted first was to just learn music, like how music works. Why, if you put this note and this note together, it sounds like this, like the theory, the basic theory.
And that's another important thing that I wish it would be a little bit more upfront on audio engineering schools.
Yeah.
Know the music. If I wasn't able to read the score, I had no chance of doing that RZA orchestral job.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like for something like this, it's not a technical thing. You have to. I mean, it is a technical thing, but it's also like the semantics of music are completely naked in front of you. So the way to do it is, it's not just putting crossfades on things. You have to know that this is the same scale.
Yes.
And this goes still in the same tonality, and they're built together.
Correct.
Instead of just, let me just throw some fancy
snap
plugins.
it to the bar, to the beat.
Exactly.
No, that's not how it really works. And so that's one thing that I think the up-and-coming guys, I don't want to generalize it, but all of these producers want to be, I think it would be more important for them to be able to maybe read music than just know how to program a synth.
Yeah.
Then a couple of years will be obsolete.
Yeah, which this is another thing that I saw. For some reason, it was on my algorithm of like these chord packs.
Yeah.
That you just buy like these chord packs from MIDI and you just drag it, and wow, it sounds so cool. But it's like, these are someone that knows music theory created these chord packs for you, and then you buy this without understanding what is happening in the chord, without understanding why it sounds like this, or why, if you move from this chord to this chord to that chord, why does it sound like, and then you're basically bound to the mercy of that chord pack instead of knowing what are the ingredients,
Absolutely. I mean, and you don't have to go super deep, but just by learning what's the circle of fifth.
Exactly.
That can get you a long way.
Exactly. Circle of fifth, scale.
Yeah.
Which scale fits each chord? It's basic things that can go a long way for producers.
So maybe instead of buying indeed that specific piece of hardware gear or synth or microphones, why don't you dedicate some time studying music?
Exactly. And because it's not quick. It's not quick. It's a long process. It's a long and tedious. And I mean, I have some producers coming to me to my studio, and it's like, I tell them always, it's boring. It's like what we call hard labor. Like you have to study all these scales and circle of fifths and be able to put them, and you don't see results within 1 week. You see it takes years and years to study the theory of music. But eventually you have something that other producers that didn't do the work just don't have it, and you have like added value that is You can't measure it.
which makes you free, you know, in a way. And the other guys are going to always be dependent on that thing, on that passion,
Exactly.
or that person, which is a good thing. Eventually, that's the best case scenario, to rely on a
Exactly.
person than just a piece of tech. Yeah, that's very, very, very important, I must say. And especially with today's generations, where, you know, their span of attention is extremely limited
Yeah.
because of how they get bombarded with social media and all of that. It's hard, you know. One of the things that really, you know, resonates with me in a bad way is like whenever I tell my students, this is the book, like, where is the video? Like, there's no video. There's hundreds of pages. You need to go through it. You want the video, yeah, but that's just scratching the surface.
Exactly.
Barely scratching the surface.
Absolutely.
You want to know how this works? Do the hard work.
Yeah. Pietro,
Cool.
thank you so much
Man,
for doing this.
my
It was
pleasure,
awesome.
my pleasure.
Time flew by. I think we were talking for like an
Oh.
hour and
90.
90 minutes. Man,
That's
it flew
crazy.
by like nothing. Thank you so much. I would love to have you again. You know.
Thank you.
And yeah, awesome. Is there something you would like to plug or like tell your studio something where?
No, I would just like to highlight that the John Lennon Educational Tour Bus is going back on tour here in Europe. We're launching in the UK, June 2025, and we'll be most likely touring with Jacob Collier. So stay tuned for that.
Jacob Collier, he's a phenomenon.
He is.
He's a phenomenon. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us to Into the Score. Thank you, Joao, here, our producer.
man.
Woohoo! Thank you, Joshua, also for doing so much work in behind the scenes. Like, subscribe, follow us. We have so much more content for you, and we will see you at the studio session.